He's a former Obama campaign foreign policy advisor. He's also a former UN and State Department official. Welcome to both of you. David, I want to start with you because did you hear what Becky Anderson said? These attacks on the mosque in Saudi Arabia might be a tipping point, might be the thing that draws Middle Eastern countries together to fight a common enemy. Is that possible?
Well, it certainly is possible. You would hope that it galvanizes the Gulf countries to help more with the fight against ISIS. Of course, they have been helping up to now, but they can do a lot more. The attacks that have happened over the last few weeks are very tragic, but are not totally unexpected. When ISIS is backed into a corner, they do one of two things. Either they do terrorist attacks abroad, or they seek to attack new cities and towns that they have not attacked before in Iraq and Syria that they seem to think are vulnerable. I think we can expect ISIS to continue to do both of those things because ISIS has lost a lot of territory in Iraq. They went down from about 33% of Iraq to about 15% now. So they are, in a way, backed in a corner. However, they still have the stronghold in Mosul, and we have to watch now to see what happens with respect to the operation to take back Mosul.
Well, exactly, because in light of this huge terror attack that killed 215 people, I think the government of Iraq is stepping back and saying maybe it's not time to retake Mosul. Right, Colonel? Isn't that what they're thinking?
I think so, and of course the dismissing of the Interior Ministry falls right into that. They have to reassess what they're doing. And we've talked about this before, Carol. The residents of Baghdad are more concerned about their own security than this eventual inevitable fall of Mosul. I mean, the Iraqi government will eventually go back and retake Mosul, but they have to secure Baghdad first. Everybody thought with the fall of Fallujah and the ridding of ISIS from Anbar province that the security in Baghdad would improve. This was what Prime Minister Abadi was telling the Iraqi people, but we've seen just in the last couple of days that that's just not true. So I think they're going to step back, reassess what they're doing. And I think David's right. ISIS is going to continue to do this because this is success for them. And they're going to continue to undermine the Iraqi government just like they're trying to undermine the Saudi government. This is typical.
So it is typical, David. So I ask you, here's a suicide bomber that blows himself up outside of a mosque. It could have been awful. It could have been terrible. And what is Saudi Arabia doing about it? What are they doing?
Well, Saudi Arabia, they have to maintain their own internal security. I think they have a pretty good handle on that. Obviously, they'll probably make some additional changes to their security procedures, but they also need to be supporting the effort to take out ISIS in the places where it's very strong, in Syria and in Iraq, and they ought to be contributing more to that effort, including perhaps contributing, Sunni soldiers who could assist, perhaps on the ground. It may ultimately take a ground force to push ISIS out. And I think the bombing in Baghdad is very interesting and very telling about the strength of ISIS to continue to do attacks. But remember, when I lived in Iraq, in Baghdad, in 06 and 07, we had tens of thousands of U.S. soldiers there, and we still couldn't prevent attacks like this. So we're going to continue to see attacks like this in Baghdad until ISIS is completely pushed out of Iraq.
That's why Saudi Arabia needs to get involved. But instead, what is Saudi Arabia doing? Saudi Arabia is bombing Yemen, right? And it's not targeting ISIS terrorists, is it, Colonel? Isn't it targeting Houthi rebels, which are backed by Iran, because Saudi Arabia is more afraid of Iran than it is of ISIS?
Well, that's their big rival in the Gulf, of course, and they are involved in Yemen, but they are contributing to the U.S.-led coalition. But we've talked about ground forces with the Saudis for a long time, and I think David's right on there. You're going to need some sort of ground force to go in there, and what we're doing on the ground in Syria is not working, especially if you're going to need a ground force and you want Saudi troops to do it. The Saudis have one requirement, that we go in there with them as well, and I just don't see that happening in the current environment.
All right, I have to leave it there. David Tafuri, Colonel Rick Francona.